y'all! In today's video, we're going to talk about your leadership resiliency toolkit. As you grow in your leadership authority and in your career, and as your family's growing and those obligations are growing at the same time, it's important that you learn to build your own toolkit to manage the pressure and the stress that comes along with all that. If this sounds interesting to you, stick with me. If you're new here, I'm Krista Smith, and I'm on a mission to help ambitious women thrive as leaders by sharing what I've learned and am still learning as an executive, lifelong optimizer, and beauty school wannabe. If my content is helpful to you, please share my channel with your friends, like, subscribe, and hit that notify bell so that you will be notified when I drop new content every Friday. Now, before we start with your leadership resiliency toolkit, I want to explain that this will be part of a series that I'm starting called The Inner Game of Leadership. What is the inner game of leadership, you might ask? It's a metaphor that we've borrowed from sports. And just as you can imagine that a high-performing athlete needs to practice and hone their outer game, and that's building their physique, practicing how they shoot a basketball, practicing their pole vaulting over and over, practice swinging the bat, practice catching the ball. Those are all the outer game. An athlete's inner game is their mental toughness and their resiliency and their mindset that allows them to compete at that level and to manage the pressure and the stress that comes along with that kind of training and with that kind of scrutiny. Similarly, in leadership, we have an inner game and an outer game. Our leadership outer game are the things that people can see. It's how we communicate with our teams, it's how we set vision, it's how we hold people accountable, it's how we give feedback to team members. Those are all visual things that people can see. Our leadership inner game is our own mental toughness and our own mindset and the approaches that we use inside of our head to be able to do all of the things on the outside. And what's so interesting about this concept is how hard leadership is and how many paradoxes are within leadership that we have to hold in tension. Things like we need to be tough and tender. We need to be able to hold people accountable and be deeply compassionate. We need to be able to be tough and decisive and vulnerable. Those paradoxes that we need to hold require us to build mental toughness to allow more than one thing to be true at the same time and allow us to make sense out of all of the inputs that are coming into our lives. So first in this series on our inner leadership game, we'll be building our resilience toolkit. So the idea of a resilience toolkit is something that I wish that I learned about way earlier in my leadership journey. I didn't realize that as my responsibility grew, both at home and at work, that as much as I practiced all of the skills that I needed in order to execute the leadership tasks, I also needed to be working on my own ability to handle the pressure that was involved in all of that. The first one is your physical health and fitness. This involves everything around working to make sure that you are as healthy as you can possibly be physically to handle the demands that you're faced with in your life. Making sure that you negotiate with the people in your family to allow yourself to get enough sleep, to practice good sleep hygiene so that you can get enough sleep. It looks like establishing a fitness routine that allows you to be consistent. Now, recently, I've been really reflecting on my own fitness routine and my lifetime of working on my own physical fitness. And I really believe that consistency is more important than intensity. And once you establish consistency in your life, you can really vary the intensity depending on what your fitness goals are. But at a minimum, we need to keep our bodies healthy and in some level of physical fitness so that we can handle the demands. Also in our physical resiliency part of the toolkit is managing any medical conditions that we might have. getting regular physical checkups, making sure that we are doing the things that our medical professionals tell us to do, taking any kind of maintenance medication, and dealing with those annoying kind of minor ailments that, as we mature, can add up. Think of it as your knee pain or your hip pain, or maybe your thyroid's not quite right. We can ignore these things, and we have to recognize that if we ignore them, it comes at a cost of our own physical wellness. The next aspect of our resiliency toolkit is social wellness. Now, I understand with all of the pressures and the challenges of family and work, how easy it is to let your relationships take a back seat and your friendships take a back seat. I can tell you that as you progress in your leadership journey, having social and emotional support is so important. And the time that it takes to invest in these kinds of friendships and relationships so that you have that kind of support is absolutely worth it. And it's some of the things that makes life worth living. In addition to friendships, this can look like networking outside of your organization, making sure that you have trusted people that you can bounce ideas off of and really have thinking partners without any kind of judgment or fear that the people that you're talking to eventually will be people that you work for or that work for you someday. Invest in your friendships. One thing that I have found that works in a crazy busy life when your family is demanding on you and your work is demanding on you is to try to find a small circle of friends that you can establish a reoccurring calendar meeting so that nobody has to take the proactive step of actually setting aside the time on a periodic basis, whether it be monthly or quarterly or weekly, but that it's always there and it's standing, and you and that group of individuals can start building their worlds around that precious time that you're setting aside with each other. And you can have a purpose to come together, like a book club, or to discuss articles or ideas, or it can just be to support each other in each of your journeys or to enjoy great wine or great food. But definitely scheduling it in advance on a reoccurring basis increases the probability that it's going to happen. Finally, in your leader's resiliency toolkit is mental wellness. What does it look like for you to improve your mental wellness? This might be mindfulness and meditation, and really taking the time to learn how to identify the thoughts that are happening in your head, your inner dialogue, learning how to interrupt that, and replacing your inner dialogue with thoughts and ideas and dialogue that's actually helpful to your personal mindset and your personal leadership journey. It might look like using something like Headspace. I love Headspace. Meditation and mindfulness is not ever anything that you learn. It is something that you practice, and it's committing to the long game in practicing and learning more and more about your mindset, more and more about recognizing those thoughts, and more about the discipline of meditation and how to recognize the thoughts and let them go. The other thing that's great about apps like Headspace is that they have sleep stories that are just really relaxing, mindless stories. They even have specific meditations on things just like calming the inner chatter in your brain. And so just an incredible help to tame and train our minds so that we have more decision space in how we show up in the workspace. So in conclusion, a leader's resiliency toolkit can contain many different aspects. The three that we talked about today are your physical wellness and fitness, your social wellness, and your mental wellness. I'm really interested, how do you build your own personal resiliency toolkit? What have you tried? What has worked? What hasn't worked? I would love it if you would leave comments in the comments section below so that our community can start a dialogue on this topic. I hope that this information has been helpful to you. Remember, it's part of our Leadership Inner Game series that I'll be starting, and so please tune in for more. I drop new content every Friday, and if it's helpful to you, Please subscribe, make sure that you get notified, and share with your friends. Have a great week.